So yeah, I'm coming from Arizona, like they said. Yesterday we set a record heat day at 115 degrees. So thank goodness for air conditioning and spending time inside. I do want to just take a little bit of time to introduce myself further. Thank you, Chats, for that nice introduction. But yeah, I'm married. I'll be celebrating 10 years this October. I have 3 awesome kids who I love very much. I work at Ethos Engineering, which is a small company in Tempe. My background is in roadway engineering on various light rail projects, highways, city parks, city streets. And then I became office manager about 2.5 years ago with Ethos. When I graduated in 2008 from ASU, I personally really struggled right out of school to get acclimated to work as a professional. There were just so many life skills that I was never taught. But everyone just assumes that you will know or that you're going to learn as you go. But through mentorships and working with some really amazing leaders, I was able to see some themes in my life, and I really spent years learning about myself, creating a vision for what I want to get out of life, and really base that on the set of skills and strengths that I found out about myself. In 2016, I started EngineeringYOU as a financial coach, and now I also train as a leadership coach as well. I learned the hard way for many years. I'm sure many of you can share in that as well. But then I wanted to help young professionals just avoid so many years of these difficulties. And why shouldn't we learn these on purpose before we actually need them? So I have various programs that if you are interested, you can check my website, EngineeringYOU.org, or feel free to reach out to me at any time. But today we're going to be talking about leadership. We're also going to talk about improving team performance, but I just wanted you to kind of understand a little bit about me and my background before we dive into that. I absolutely love helping leaders leverage their responsibility and their skills to help lift those up around them. In our current workplace, and the new generations, the young generations, they have these higher expectations of our managers and of our leaders. They don't want to just be managed, they want to be coached. They want to be led, and they have this strong desire for development. And I love having a very small part of that, when I work with people. So Chas asked me to spend just a minute on leadership. I know we have some students from the mentor program here. And so before I kind of dive into that, I just want to have everybody kind of just think real quick about a leader in your life who had a big impact. Maybe this person went above and beyond to help train or grow or improve your life. In the chat box, if you wouldn't mind indulging me, I'm just trying to pull that up real quick. I'm going to have a couple questions throughout today that I would love your participation. If you wouldn't mind throwing a thought or two in there, and I can maybe read a couple as we go. But when you think about this leader that you just thought of, or maybe other people in the past who have really had an impact on you, what sort of words or what sort of thoughts kind of come into your mind when you think about leadership? Compassion, thank you, Steve. Honest, Dustin. Decisive, Patrick. Thank you guys for participating there. I do appreciate that. Leading by example, yes, that's also a very, very good one. Empowering, yeah, those are great words. I think a lot of times in the workplace and just in general, people often will use leader and manager or boss kind of interchangeably, but they are very different. And I think it's important for us to distinguish between the two. You'll see here maybe some of the words that you've already said. A manager is it's a title that was given probably by a higher up manager, maybe classified as the boss, whereas a leader, there's absolutely no title required. And it's not necessarily a leader of the team, but you can be a leader on your team at any level. even right out of college. You know, a manager has workers and employees, whereas a leader, you know, they have followers. Obviously, if they don't have anybody following them or watching their example, they're not a leader because they're not leading anybody. You know, a manager will maintain and administer. Managers are really about keeping things kind of in the bubble, where leaders are inspiring and motivating. A manager will order or direct, whereas a leader will coach their team through whatever it is that they're working on. A manager receives the vision and then their job is to execute it, whereas a leader typically is creating or clarifying or explaining and rallying the team around this vision. And then the manager is all about systems, whereas a leader is all about relationships. Having high EQ, it's not on the list, but having high, you know, emotional intelligence as a leader is essential for leaders. You know, it's a really important thing. There's many other words that we could put on these lists, but when most presenters that I've witnessed go through lists like this, it always makes me feel like the managers are the bad guys. You know, the managers are just like the worst. And I want to be very clear that we absolutely need great managers. You know, the great successful managers are the ones that get things done. They're the ones that are reliable. They're the ones that, you know, the scope, schedule, budget is going to lead to success on the project. And so you absolutely do need manager training. But now, just being a good manager is not enough. Especially with the workplace as it is now. You know, we need managers who can lead. We need managers who can coach their employees. You know, I don't think anybody wakes up each morning thinking, yes, I cannot wait to get to work so I can be managed. And I just don't think that's a thought. And I also don't think that managers wake up every morning think, I can't wait to go manage my team. Like, it's not inspiring. It's not really it takes a lot of the human element out of it. And people really want to be led. And I think they always have. But I just think that our workplaces in the past were set up differently. And the workplaces have really evolved over the years as new generations come into the workplace. And they're going to continue to evolve as more and more generations, you know, come into the workplace. And we must be flexible enough to grow personally and professionally along with it. There's a book called The Mind of a Leader, and they had a survey that showed 77% of managers felt that they did a good job of engaging their people. But then they surveyed the employees, and only 12% of those employees actually felt like their managers did a good job. So there's a huge gap that these managers are engaging their employees. I think the statistic might be a little bit older now, but the new wave of managers were trained by these other managers that are still learning to develop the leadership. And so eventually I just want to kind of disrupt that cycle of slowly growing out of it and have a huge change in our industry with leaders and growing and focusing on leadership development. So the best part about leadership, like I mentioned, is that you don't have to be in charge to be a leader, because you don't have to have a title. You know, teaching and developing young leaders is one of my passions. I love it when a young employee learns early about leadership and really dedicates time to growing, and they become that essential team player that the manager then can consistently count on. Or maybe the team looks up to them, even if this leader has less experience. Now, that team might not look up to them for the technical experience, but this young leader is setting a really great example of what a solid team player and employee is. So I ask, you know, how are you growing your leadership? And it doesn't matter if you're still in university, or 2 years of experience, or 40 years of experience. We should always be working on our leadership, just like we should always be working on time management and communication skills and all of those other important skills. It's good to learn early that leadership takes years to develop. And one of the biggest problems for these new managers is they graduate, they put their head down, and they work hard, which is absolutely needed. But it's also important to keep your head up a little bit and see ways that you can train and grow your leadership skills. So that way, when you do get promoted to manager, you're not left with little to no leadership skills, but you've already developed these vital skills that you need to lead and empower and listen, valuing your team, like some of the other chats are saying. In order to be a good leader of others, you have to be able to lead yourself first. So I end this portion just to say, get intentional with your personal and professional growth. Get involved with societies like ASCE or any others that you learn about. Commit a couple hours a month to going out of your way to learning and volunteering. ASCE is kind of like a sneaky developer, because I joined ASCE thinking, what can I get out of it? And then after years and years and years, I realized I had been growing my soft skills and my leadership skills through all the volunteer programs that I worked with. And like I was learning these things along the way without realizing I was learning them. So that's why groups like ASCE are so helpful. Enroll in a course or a program. Just do something intentional. That's kind of the main thing. And I understand we have some students here, and I think it's so incredible that you joined the mentor program. I think it's incredible that your branch has created a mentor program. We have seen some success here at Arizona State University as well. But students, take advantage of it. Engage with your mentors. Don't be too proud or shy or embarrassed to ask questions. These mentors want to be a part of your success, and they want to spend time with you. So don't waste this opportunity, because this is a really amazing opportunity that you have a chance to be involved with. Really dive in, and I promise you that you will see a major return on this investment. Personally, I would not be here today speaking to you or anywhere in my career right now if I did not have the mentors that I had. So I'm so glad you're in the mentor program, and I hope you really can take advantage of that. So moving into the next portion of our presentation, we're going to be discussing improving team performance. And some students, you might be tempted to kind of check out, but I urge you to continue to take notes, because I talked about how important it is about having young leaders on a team. When you get your first job and your manager might not be doing some of these things to engage you, you might be able to find an appropriate way to ask him or her to lead you this way. Maybe they had not thought of those things, and you might be able to help get the ball rolling for them. So when it comes to team performance, I know we all have various backgrounds, but struggling team performance is not something that nobody has ever done, or not something that nobody has ever missed. Like, we've all struggled with team performance at one time or another. So when it does come to team performance, present or past, if you would indulge me by entering in the chat, what sort of struggles have you experienced with team performance? I'm sure you'll see some of them come through, and you'll identify with those as well. Like, we're not alone in many of the things when it comes to struggling with team performance. Communication, promoting people to have your vision, time, okay. Work ethic of young people. Ooh, okay, all right. Lack of clear instruction. Yeah, all of those are definitely struggles I'm sure many of us can relate to. Follow through, meeting expectations for various parties. Yeah, those are all really great. Thank you again for participating in the chat there. Like I said, many of us have experienced the struggle with team performance. Sometimes, luckily, the struggle only lasts a short season, but for many people, we may have worked on teams or entire companies that have constantly struggled with this. And so then it's like, okay, what can we do to increase it? Poor performance can be caused by a number of things, and the treatment to fix those things is equally long. If you Google just how to improve team performance, you're going to find thousands of articles about communication and strengths, productivity, goal setting, clarity, trust, some of the things that people already wrote. And it really can be overwhelming to decide where to begin. I think it can be very overwhelming when you see all of these different things that you need to focus on. So how can we simplify it? And I actually think it is very simple, or it can be very simple, because anything and everything when it comes to teams, whether that's their productivity or performance or relationships, like, everything boils down to people. the people on your teams, the individuals on your team. No matter which way you look at it, the individuals on your team is where it all begins. When it comes to them, the people on your team, obviously you cannot control them or force them to do certain things, but we can do some things that may influence to achieve a desired outcome. When it comes to teams, in my opinion, it all falls on the manager. It all starts with the manager as well. The manager, their mindset, their communication, the way that they lead is going to be the determining factor with how poor or great that team is going to be and how poor or great that team is going to perform. I believe when it comes to improving team performance, it really can be summed up to this thing of engagement, engaging our employees. It's an easy way to measure also how we're doing as a leader, because you can find ways to do surveys with your team and get feedback from them. We want to make sure whatever we're doing is something that we can measure and monitor the progress. An engaged employee is an employee who is mentally and emotionally committed to the success of your company. It's not about making them happy. It's not about making them satisfied. It's just leading them in such a way that they want to invest in the organization. And we're going to go over a couple of those actions that you can take to improve your employee engagement. But first, Gallup has been conducting surveys on employee engagement for 20 plus years. And so far in 2020, their surveys have showed for this year that we have about 37% of US employees are engaged, which means that they're the ones doing a really good job. You don't really need to work on them extra time and effort to keep them engaged. You might think, oh, okay, just a little over a third is not very many, but that number has actually increased over the last 20 years to 37%, which means 63% are not really fully engaged and they're not really committed to giving their best performance. 14% are actively disengaged, and they're actually the ones that are hurting us. If we have an actively disengaged person in our company or on our team, that's going to be a major negative that's going to cost us time, money, relationships, and who knows what else. But the number I want to really focus on is the last one, 49% are not engaged. That shows that almost half of employees are kind of on the fence. They're just going through the motions and they could be swayed either way. And that's really the group that we want to focus a lot of time and effort on. This group would leave our company or our team in a heartbeat if a better offer came in or if a better leader reached out to them. They're really just waiting for something better. But the good news is that you can be something better for them. You can engage them more. You can coach them. You can lead them. Ultimately, it comes down to your relationship with them, and they can be swayed to the engaged side of things. So why focus on engagement? Surveys show that high employee engagement reduces absenteeism, it reduces turnover, it increases productivity and profitability. And for me, these numbers are significant enough to put a lot of time and invest a lot of time and effort into improving my employee engagement with my team. So how do we increase this engagement with our employees? Well, it comes down to, when it comes to engagement, it comes down and starts with you as a leader. The first thing is the mindset of the leader. Your employees are going to be able to feel what kind of mindset that you have. And so this is the place that we really want to start. You might have a bad day and that's okay, but mindset is a really difficult one to fake for a long time, because I promise you they are going to feel what you believe. What do you believe about yourself as a leader? Do you really believe that you can lead them well? Do you really believe that you can have a positive impact on their life? Do you believe that you can make a difference on your team? Like, if you can't believe this about yourself, that you have the power to actually improve and lead, the people below you, that's going to be the hurdle number one. Do you believe that you're just supposed to kind of catch the bad apples and the people doing things wrong? Or do you have the mindset of, I am here as a leader and I am called to raise them to another level? Again, that's very different. And that mindset will tell a lot to your employees. You also need to check your mindset about your team. What do you believe about them? Do you believe that they can be their best? Do you believe that they want to and that they can do good work? Do you believe that you have the best people on your team, or at least have the potential to be the best if you as a leader can work with them? Or, unfortunately, do you believe you just have a bunch of donkeys on your team that are lazy and they're unmotivated? Because whatever you believe about them is going to dictate how you interact with them. And that's, I think, why mindset is so important. If you believe that you can work with them and they truly can be the best for you, they are going to feel that. But if you believe like, I'm just going to get by with this poor, employee as long as I have to, they are going to feel that as well, and you're not going to put your best effort. So mindset is number one, where we need to start. Also, how you feel about your company is another thing. If you believe negative thoughts about your company, that's going to permeate throughout your team. So make sure that we have a positive mindset about our company. Do we believe that the company cares about the people? Do we believe at least that our team cares about each other? That might be another way to break it down. If the company is a bit, large and might be difficult to kind of buy into it, maybe break it down to just, is your team believing that they care about other people? And if we can get positive mindsets in all three of those areas, we're ready to kind of get to the next level. But if our head isn't right, we need to make sure we focus on mindset first. But after mindset, we're going to focus on communication. Communication is effective or is vital in any relationship. I believe everybody here should believe that. And it's especially important in a working relationship. So how can we communicate better with our teams? COVID, I don't know about you guys, but COVID really impacted the way that I communicate with my people, because I can't just get off from my office and walk around the cubicles and check in with them whenever I want to, or run into them in the break room and see how they're doing, or see them in the hallway. COVID really disrupted this natural flow of communication that we had. And so we need to make sure now that we are very intentional and we continue to communicate well with our team on a consistent basis. Now, that doesn't mean scheduling a ton of meaningless meetings for the sake of more meetings. We all know that there are way too many ineffective meetings that exist that we attend. But we want to schedule very intentional, focused communication with our team that is all pointing us towards that desired result of improving the team performance. The effective communication is going to require a lot of active listening. You as a leader need to be listening a lot to your team so that you can create plans of action for them rather than just dictating to them what needs to happen. So we want to create environments that are going to lend itself to strong, clear, safe discussions. One way to do that would be one-on-one. These types of meetings with, one-on-one meetings with our team, they might be best to focus, on the well-being side of things, which we're going to cover in a minute, but you can also take this time to lay out specific goals for that individual, help them clarify their role, because I don't know how long you've been in the industry, but most young engineers really struggle with that lack of clarity. The expectations were never clearly explained to them, and they're too embarrassed because they don't know what they should know. They don't ask. It's the leader's job to really clarify those expectations for each of their employees. Your employees also want to know, what does it look like to win short term? Most of your young employees don't even know what a win looks like short term. And a lot of them really have no idea what winning looks like long term either. So spending time with them and allowing them to ask you these questions and you laying out kind of a clear path for them is going to be really key for them. When you do these one-on-ones, use some sort of tool to take notes. And then the key here is to follow up with them. If you have a meeting and you discuss things and you don't follow up with them, that was a waste of everybody's time, because young employees or any employees need continual follow-up and monitoring the progress. Scheduling one-on-one meetings, I recommend to do that once a quarter. I think if you might be, whoa, that's a lot of time, and I don't have time for that. I think you will absolutely need to be doing this, because you're going to cost yourself more time when you're trying to replace them when they leave, or when they leave a huge gap and all your whole team is impacted because we couldn't dedicate 15 minutes a quarter to each of our employees. And then commonly, most of the time, many of us have just spent annual reviews one time a year, and that's about the only time where we've ever had these focused one-on-one meetings with our teams. And that's just unacceptable. So that's why once a quarter would be great, because your employees need more than that. And I promise you, you're going to see a return on that time investment when you see that they are more engaged. Powerful feedback. We want to give feedback and direction and coaching that really helps people to be better and calls them up to be better versions of themselves in work and out of work. Giving powerful feedback though without trust is going to cause people to go into defense mode. So before you give feedback, you have to make sure that you evaluate, and you might have to spend some time working on that relationship first before you are able to give really powerful and positive, effective feedback. When we give feedback, we want to tell them specifically where they're excelling and where they have opportunity to grow. When I give feedback, I try my best not to necessarily focus on the results. Like, great job, you got the submittal turned in in time. But I try to focus on the process that it took to get there. You came in late, a couple days a week to work on this, or you stayed late a couple days a week, or I saw you coaching this other, young employee to really help them to work on this project with us, whatever it might be. Like, that's what I'm trying to recognize in them. I'm not just trying to focus on the results. I'm trying to focus on the process that they did, which is going to help us get those results more and more. Helping them take responsibility for their work. And yeah, if they succeed, we're celebrating them and we're recognizing them. There are so many statistics out there about employee recognition that's lacking. Employees really want to feel recognized and they're not getting that. And it doesn't have to be in a big setting. It could be a private note, thank you for your work. It could be just a quick, sentence in the hallway as you're walking back, or, a little chat on Teams or Skype, just, hey, you did a great job, and, get specific again on that feedback. If they fail, one of the hardest things for failure as a young employee is if we fail and nobody kind of addresses that right out of the gate. Our mind starts to wander and we start to build something up. So as a leader, as a manager, I think it's really important that you confirm that failure. Like, yes, you did fail. Like, yeah, you did screw this up, but here's an action plan that we can take to now avoid this failure in the future, or here's how we can improve. Anytime a manager has told me just flat out, yeah, you messed that one up, it's actually made me feel a lot better just to confirm, like, he knows I screwed up, but he's also has my back by helping me build out of it. And so I try to do that now with my employees. And if you really want to go the extra mile with feedback, ask your employees to give you feedback. I ask my employees quite frequently to give me feedback. And I had to build that trust. I had to build this safe environment for them to do so that they knew that they could tell me effective feedback to me, because I knew that I was going to take that to just be better for them. And you're going to have to check your mindset before you ask for this feedback, because you may not be ready to accept any or all of it, but it is a powerful tool as well. When you ask for feedback from your employees, they feel engaged, they feel like you respect their decisions, they feel like you care about what they think. So there's just many, many positive factors for asking for their feedback. Last thing about communication is random check-ins. And this was so much easier walking around the office and running into somebody or stopping at their desk. I understand that, but we all have phones, we all have Skype, we all have Teams or Zoom or whatever program. Just do a quick call or check in with them. And this is different than micromanagement. And if your employee feels like you're micromanaging them with these random check-ins, you're doing it wrong. We are doing these random check-ins as a support. We are doing them to ask them questions, if they need help, or because they might be hesitant to come to you to ask you these questions on their own. But if you kind of give them this avenue, or this, you're opening the gate for them, hey, I'm here, ask me whatever question you want, they are going to find things to ask you. So asking them to participate is great. Asking them if they have all the tools that they need is also going to be a big thing. They might not know what tools are available to them, so you may explain some of the different possibilities, and then they can run with one of those on their own. These check-ins are great because they might say something that makes you trigger a thinking about somebody else who can help them, and you can now connect them to improve that efficiency and increase that performance. So they're not just struggling and spinning the wheels and doing it on their own. And then the last piece I want to discuss is the human factor. You know, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. Yes, we have work to do, and yes, there is so much more to life than just work. I don't believe that work and life are completely separate. Like, I don't believe we have a bubble over here that's work and nothing impacts that, and then there's a bubble over here that's life, and that's all separate. Like, they all impact each other. And so I really try to embrace the human factor with all of my employees. You know, I put some focus on employee wellness. As a small company, we do not have some of the wellness programs that some of the larger companies have rolled out nationwide, worldwide. But, you know, we try our best, and we need to make sure that we protect them, because that builds trust when they know that we have their back. Human beings, you know, we feel first, and then we kind of use logic to support our decisions. So checking in with the employee wellness is a really big thing. Self-leadership, like I mentioned earlier, always precedes team leadership. So if an employee is really struggling on your team, it might be helpful for you to help them lead themselves well. You know, checking in with them on the wellness side of things and making sure that they're doing everything that they can do to really lead themselves is a strategy you can take. And that might be physical wellness, social wellness. You know, COVID caused us to lose a lot of freedom and routine. And so checking in with an employee on their social wellness is a really great thing to do. Work-life balance. You know, a lot of us are working more now that we're at home. I don't know about you, but you know, there's lots of statistics that are showing that employees are working 1 to 3 hours more per day working at home. And now the work-life balance might be a little bit more disrupted, or they can't turn it off at the end of the day. Helping them learn about work-life balance and really kind of focus on that might be something you can help them with or guide them towards. Emotional wellness. Stress is a huge challenge right now, and just checking on your employees is a really helpful thing to do. I ask you as leaders, as managers, that you do take risks in having these deeper conversations. And if you don't have a history of doing it already, it's going to be extremely awkward. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be extremely awkward the first couple times that you do it, but I promise that it's going to get easier and easier, and your team is going to start to feel like you have their back, and the team is going to kind of get in that rhythm, and they're going to understand that you're doing this for them. And the goal is not necessarily to be their friend. That's not what I'm trying to get at all. We just want them to know that we care about them as a human being. You know, we want to ask how they're feeling. We want to ask how they're doing. You know, we want to ask about their lives. You know, they might want to just talk, you know, for a couple minutes, you know, give them a couple minutes because that will actually help their productivity later in the day. I had an experience myself where I was struggling with something years ago, and luckily I had an amazing manager who was a strong leader, and she recognized that something was off, and so she just said, hey, the next 4 Fridays for 15 minutes, come to my office and let's just chat, and we're going to chat about everything that's not work. And it was so helpful for me, and I really appreciated that they took the time to do that, you know. And it wasn't like deep conversations or anything like that. It was just nice to know that somebody cared. And there will be times that you are going to have to refer them to HR, or they might have to seek professional help. Please do not take on more than you should. We're not professional counselors here, but showing somebody that you care about them doesn't really have to be a huge thing. And the sad fact is that you might actually be their only lifeline, and you don't even know it. You know, they might not have anybody in their life that's asking them how they're doing. And so just think about that and think that it could be a really big impact, and you're really helping somebody. Another human factor is vision. You know, every employee needs to believe that the future is brighter than our present. they need to know that the company has a vision for the future, and then they need to know how they fit into that vision of the company. It's the leaders and the manager's job to connect them into that vision and show them. You as a leader need to be fully bought into the vision of your company, or maybe you have a kind of an adopted vision just for your team. That's great if you have a vision just for your team and places that you want to go the next 1, 5, 10 years with your team. But it doesn't do anybody any good if you don't share that with your employees. They can't read your mind, and you can't just tell them once. You have to share this vision with them as often as possible. Do it on a weekly basis, and they might get sick of it, but who cares? Because you are trying to all move together to, increase performance, improve productivity, bond as a team, and increase this engagement. It's worth the 5 seconds that it takes to share this vision, because vision really fosters hope. And the last thing on the human factor is coaching. Help your team set professional and personal goals. Especially the young professionals, they might not know much about goals. They might not know how they can help. They don't know how to set realistic goals or using the SMART goal method. But setting goals is not enough. They must measure that progress and monitor. So maybe these one-on-one meetings that you have, that's when you can use to kind of check in on some of their goals. You obviously cannot set the goals for them, but you can use your experience to help guide them and coach them through all of that. Your employees want to have that win defined. You can share what a win looks like for the week. You can share what a win looks like for the month, or you can kind of tell them what a win looks like and then show them how it's done by being the example. Like somebody mentioned in the chat there, like you are the example for them. And all of that falls under the coaching side of things. Coaching could be, a month-long discussion in itself, but I urge you just to start to look into it a little bit more. My hope today is that you're able to take at least one thing to start working on immediately. Most of this information is not groundbreaking, but too often we hear this and then we stuff it in a drawer, and I hate to say that, but it happens. It sounds really nice. The information sounds great. And then people realize that it takes a lot of effort to execute and they give up. And it is going to take a lot of time and effort to develop this. It is going to take a lot of intentionality on you as a manager and you as a leader's part to put this into place, but the return on this investment is going to be very large. And eventually it's going to become part of your routine. It's going to be kind of part of the flow of your team. Your team is going to start engaging. The performance is going to increase. Everyone will start to build up each other because you have this common language and this common vision and just this unity on your team. So it's going to not remove your work, but it will relieve it a little bit because eventually you just have to work on maintaining it rather than starting from ground zero. If you've been doing this already and maybe starting to slide, I hope that this kind of gives you a renewed inspiration to start it again. And if you haven't yet tried some of the coaching and the leading and checking on your employees, some of these one-on-ones, giving this effective and powerful feedback to them that's actually going to help them. I hope that you start one thing today. But I can't thank you enough for giving me your time today. I can't thank you enough for being here. I believe we have some time for questions. So I'm here and happy to assist as well as I can. So with that, Chas, I will leave it to you to see if we have any questions.
Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to chime in on the chat function. Yeah, we've got a few minutes here so we can have a discussion. Oh, Chaz got one right there.
Is there a situation where active listening wouldn't be productive? Oh boy, I think active listening is always productive. Active listening, we're not just listening to the words, but we are engaging in their, evaluating their body language. We are evaluating their tone. We are going beyond just the words. And so if somebody's yelling, that was the first thought that came into my mind. If somebody's just berating you or just totally out of control, I think active listening still plays a part, because then you might need to change the way that you communicate and interact with them in that moment to kind of diffuse the situation. But active listening is always going to be productive, I believe. Wayne you mentioned employee engagement. What's the best way to measure this, surveys or other? So we do surveys, and I check in with them with the feedback on the one-on-one. So we'll do surveys once a year with our annual reviews. When we actually do our annual reviews, we actually spend very little time on the employees' production, because we do that throughout the year with the one-on-one meetings and the coaching. So there should be no surprise on the production and the performance of the individual. When we do our annual reviews at Ethos, we focus on how are they fitting into the company, what can the company do to support them better, how have we as leaders done well, so that's getting the feedback on the engagement, and then asking, like, where do they fall? Like, do they feel like they'll go out on a limb to do better or work harder for the employee? Or can we do a better job of increasing that engagement? And then you can do a survey. And if you Google, employee engagement surveys, I'm sure you can find plenty in there that are going to maybe help you create your own surveys. Any other questions? How can a fresher should get actively involved in any projects since there's no company's working style? So I'm assuming, how can a newbie get actively involved in any projects? Well, I think it's the leader's job. Again, in my opinion, everything starts with the leader and trickles down, and the leader's main focus should be on the individuals. If there's any sort of problem, I'm always going to look at the leader first, especially if there's a problem employee, I still look at the leader first, because what is that leader doing or not doing that's helping or not helping that difficult employee? So when a newbie or a fresh, out of college person gets on the team, I think it's up to the leader or the manager to quickly set those expectations and show them how the flow of the group operates, showing them that working style. Every company does have a different working style. Every group operates differently. I've had a very unique career. For the most part, I've worked at smaller companies. I have spent time at a couple large firms. But for the most part, the smaller companies, there will be 6 months to a year where I get lent out to a larger firm because they needed help. So I've been able to spend at least a year in 8 different offices and spend time with many different groups. And so I've had a really awesome opportunity to see how different groups are run. So I think it really is important for that leader and that manager to take that, fresh out of college graduate and take them under their wing and spend time with them. And if you have a big enough team, delegate that to a high-performing individual. And maybe that's going to be their buddy, for a short time. And that person has the responsibility of training and showing them how the ropes are done. So I hope that answers your question there. We have a few more minutes for more questions. I'm happy to help however I can.
Actually, just wanted to ask, I guess since you mentioned you manage your office, I guess over the last few months, how have you kind of stayed engaged with your employees and, through COVID and making sure communication keeps up and whatnot?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. It was hard. Actually, when we first started, we were scrambling because we didn't know what to do. And so we initially started with a weekly Zoom call. with the entire company, which again, we have a small company of 10 people. But then I also have a weekly call with, my EITs. And so I'll check in with them there. Zoom was the best way for us to connect. Seeing their face allowed me to listen more appropriately or more actively. So I recommend at all possible, try to have some sort of video format. But a text message, on a Monday morning, hey, hope you're doing good. I'm here for you if you need. It can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be these big elaborate things. It's just showing them that I'm thinking about them, that I care about them. I want them to succeed, not just at work, but outside of work. And the hardest thing for me was starting to ask them more personal questions, but not obviously too personal. But I started asking just, how are you doing for real? I think we get into the habit of just saying, hey, how you doing? How you doing? And it's always that surface, I'm good. But my employees, they were feeling stressed. They were feeling overwhelmed. They were feeling down. I struggled with all of those emotions as well. So I took a step and I just said, okay, look, real talk, how are you doing? How can I support you? And it was awkward at first. And now it's just become part of our routine. And now when I ask it, or if they ask me, hey, boss, how are you doing today? Like, I know they actually have my best interest and they're asking me because they care about me as an individual, and it just feels great. We've really been able to bond during the last few months, but the first few weeks were definitely difficult. Let's see, Henry.
I'm just curious, have you noticed any, have you noticed any difference in, I guess, performance, productivity?
I actually, personally, I've seen that it has stayed the same or even improved. So the owner of our company, or the two owners of our company, one of them has worked from home quite often, and one of them is not really a big fan of working from home. I've tried to provide a work from home option, at least on a part-time basis, for the first couple of years that I became office manager, and the owner was really hesitant. And now that he sees how productive we are, he is a firm believer. I think working from home is going to be an option, even after everything with COVID kind of goes away, which was one of the questions. Do you think working from home will continue? Now, I say that with, I think if we have the option to meet, one day a week in person, that's still really important for us. Just because we want to see each other, and the relationships do operate better when you're physically in person. But I do believe that COVID has shown that we can be productive at home, if just as effectively. The other part about that is, I think if you had an unproductive employee at the office, COVID just showed how unproductive they were. And so they might be really struggling to get on track, and you might be needing to have some conversations and coaching and leading with them and see if they can have some improvement. Let's see. Drew asked, you said that you worked with many various firms or different sizes. Have you run into a situation where the leadership was not optimal? If so, what are some things that you did make things better and overcome that obstacle? Yeah, I have, I hate to say, but I've worked with some really poor leaders over my 12 years of experience. I've been yelled at, I've been yelled out of an office where my manager, I said one thing that set him off, and it was something that he was dealing with outside of work. And he literally screamed at me to get out of his office. And I was just stunned. I would say that was poor leadership, but he had a history of poor leadership already. One of the companies I worked with, they had a lot of eager young professionals, but their managers had kind of an older way of doing things. And so there was a lot of headbutting. And so I wasn't even an employee of this company, but I almost acted as a mediator to have these individuals or two groups of people talk together. And the younger folks, they eventually created a young professionals network within their office where they can meet once a month and then ask some of the older, managers or the managers to come in and maybe give them expertise on networking one month or communication one month. And that really was a way that they started to build their relationships. So I think that was probably my most successful working at another company or being at a different team. That was a really great opportunity and experience. I think to finish answering that question, I think keeping your head up is the most important thing. And with EngineeringYOU, I talk about keeping your head up all the time. Because if you just put your head down and focus on what you're working on, you're missing so many opportunities, so many people around you. And so keeping your head up and being willing to act is a huge, huge deal. And so whenever I've worked at other companies, I just kept my head up. Like, yes, I was a hard worker, but by keeping my head up and seeing where I could improve, and even though I wasn't a member of that team, just knowing like, hey, I believe I had that mindset that I could improve this group, it really made a difference. And so I think that's key. I hope that answers your question.
Give last call for questions. We're on really good on time, so before we kind of disband, Nicolai, I just want to thank you again for giving the presentation. I found it really useful. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you again for having me. Actually, I do see a question. Do you mind if I go through this one, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. We got a few minutes.
Yeah. You mentioned that sometimes it is easy to slide into complacency. Is there a reality check you can do every day to avoid this? That's a great question. And again, I'm just being, honest, opening up. I really struggled with COVID when it first started. I'm a very big person of routine. I have many habits that I've developed that I've put into place to help me to continue to operate at a high level. And COVID disrupted all of that and really shocked me. And so I think that getting some sort of morning routine and getting kind of the day started off right, if I go to bed with some sort of complacency or some sort of struggle, if I start my morning routine off solid and really focusing on who can I serve that day, who can I encourage that day, I will define for myself what does a win look like today. And I have a few other questions that I run through every single morning. And then at the end of the day, just answering, did I perform at my best level? And did I help others perform at their best level? And if I can just answer those, it really has helped me to overcome some of that complacency, because nobody is, totally invulnerable to those sorts of feelings and never struggles with those sorts of things. So for me, that was really helpful to continue with my routine and ask myself these questions and reflect on a daily basis on who I served and how I did. I hope that answers your question.
All right. Well, I think that'll, we're right on the time. So yeah, thanks again, Nicolai. I just want to mention everybody, we did record this, so if you missed any part of this presentation, we'll just post it to our branch website. And we have been doing that for the last few Zoom meetings. I think there's one that wasn't, but otherwise, yeah, just feel free to go on there if you missed any part of it. And yeah, just I want to thank you once again, Nicolai.